the easiest way to be fired as a CMO.
If you haven't got a commercial bone in your body, don't
That's
do
fair.
it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Don't go near it. If you don't work hard on yourself, then you can't be everything that people want you to be.
Is there any kind of bit of career advice that you've got that you wish you ignored?
You can't hang your hat on the fact that you've got it right.
Because a lot of people do think, I'm not going to go down the private equity route because it's going to be highly stressful.
You had a kind of beaming light on everything that could go wrong or that you needed to kind of rethink again. What marketing are doing doesn't really bother me.
Yeah,
well, actually, it
completely.
should.
Okay, welcome back to Digital Cheesecake. I'm very excited for this guest. I have known James for 5 years, I think. He's been, I would say, a mentor to me, probably. And he's been a boss and a client. Lucky to work with you, but thanks for coming
No
all the
worries.
way. He's made a big deal about
Thanks,
the fact
James.
that you've come
Yes.
just here today. There was a cancellation from you, that's why.
Yes. Yeah, I did apologise before
Yeah,
we
you
kicked
did,
off.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And
But
you
I'm
flew
here
here.
now. I'm
And
here
you
now.
flew here, which
Yeah.
is very honouring.
You work, I mean, I've worked with you in private equity backed businesses. I mean, we could just go slightly back to that experience.
Okay.
We won't name names, of
Yeah.
course. So, what are your thoughts of being in that business when we were in it together?
When I worked with you,
Yeah.
um,
The intensity was insane,
it
but also
was,
the most
yeah.
rewarding. But
But it was during a very kind of crazy time for everybody.
Yeah.
It was COVID. It was like
Yeah.
literally, I think the day we got locked down was the day you started, I think, in the team.
literally, you always laugh at it.
And,
wow.
Yeah.
Everything kind of went crazy. And actually to be in education at that time was like you had a kind of beaming light on everything that could go wrong or that you needed to kind of rethink again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Because
happened.
I actually didn't ask you this question, but I was being hired, right? And then they were like, oh, we're going to put it on hold. And I think because the person got sick from the company. And
Right.
so, and then they were like, oh, actually, we're going to hire a transformation person. And that was new. And I was like, okay, so that was interesting. How come they went to that shape of like, they were like, cool, let's then go transformation first to then manage the digital stuff because it was the right thing to do. But I would have then reported into like the wrong person, you know? So
yeah.
it was like a smart decision to actually have transformation and digital underneath each other.
Correct.
But it was
yeah.
a quick decision. So I don't know how that happened.
I can't recall.
Yeah, because you got hired, so.
Yeah, I can't recall why that came about. But what I would say is that's a good example of when a business doesn't know what
Yeah.
they need.
Yeah.
Or
It happens all the
don't,
time.
don't have
Happens
their
so many
requirements
times.
kind
Yeah.
of clear. And
Yeah.
look, for some businesses, they want to kind of go on a journey as they're hiring. But
Test
they,
the waters.
But they don't understand the impact that can have on their business, let alone the
Exactly,
impact
yeah.
on the candidates and the people that they bring into the business as well. So,
Yeah.
so I think from memory, look, it turned out right in the end
Yeah.
that you came in when you did. And we were able to forge a great working relationship very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, where you absolutely excelled in the
Sweet.
setup
I
of
feel like
digital.
we're mental private session.
Yeah.
Set up the digital marketing side of the business, and I was able to really fixate on the strategy and
Yeah.
you know
Okay, nice.
what needed to transform within the business, and
Yeah.
you know make sure we could kind of get people on side and take them on the journey as well. So
What was some of our biggest
like that.
stresses that we had? And how we managed those?
I
We
think-
launched into
I think-
China.
Yeah, well, yeah. So going
Overnight.
into markets during a time where markets were closing down.
like
you know,
kind of
that
the
was-
US at the
That's
moment
pretty
a bit.
hard.
That was
Yeah.
that was a challenge.
Yeah.
I also think as well, some leaders in organisations where they don't have the knowledge or the insight of marketing or digital,
Yeah.
That's a hard
and they don't
one.
have the confidence. There could be trust challenges
Constant,
that come about, and it can be a really difficult tightrope to walk.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the most important thing is a lot of the businesses that I've worked in, you know, very commercial focused. You know, if they're PE backed, that's the only road, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's- of course, being in business anyway is about making money,
Yeah.
but there's also a hearts and mind element as well, and you have to know the components of each of those to come together to be able to take
Yeah.
everyone forward. So I think in terms of challenges, yeah, we were going into
China.
markets,
Let's
difficult
just launch
markets.
overnight. And we're like, we don't think that's the right idea.
And also, I think it's the assumption that you can do something digitally, and if it were to go wrong, it doesn't matter. Whereas we know
Yeah.
if you do something wrong in digital, the footprint's there. It absolutely
Yeah.
Yeah.
matters.
There is definitely evidence there.
No fear. But I think what you did really, I mean, I think fundamental in these private equity firms that, well, I saw when I was working with you as well, is we had a really solid team.
Yes.
So we had awesome team. It was me, you, another person called James, another person, I'll say Louise as well, and people hearing. But we were such a close-knit team that if there was any pressure from anyone above, we were like backing each other.
Yeah.
That's
And
so
what you've got
good.
with your current private equity firm is obviously you've had change in the team. But I even remember seeing that, when there was doubt in anyone's leadership position from the team and they were being, I guess, against the strategy, you were like, not going to have it in here. We're a team. And I think that's
I
been
love
like,
that.
which was really
That's
awesome.
really
Like I
important,
worked with
yeah.
you as a partner on one of your clients.
Yeah.
And you were like, no, we respect our agencies. We all work together.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
it means that you can just all focus on the same task. Or if there's all that politics stuff, it just slows you down. And plus, it's worse for the PE firm.
I think that's key, because the people you bring in, whether it's direct team members that are reporting into you or whether it's agencies that are supporting you across the globe, what I've done in the current role is we've got a matrix of agencies that support us across the globe, and I've got a very lean team in the centre.
Yeah. Excellent team.
And yeah, they are truly excellent. And, great team, great agencies, respect on both sides
Yeah.
delivers a fantastic outcome. And that's what we're seeing, right? I think where it becomes difficult is when egos come into the room and egos come in between client and agency. And I've been on both sides, both agency and
that's
this
good,
side as well.
So egos in the team, or egos like the commercial structure, or just any ego
Different
at all?
teams, hey, as well.
There is no need to talk rudely to anybody in life.
Right.
Yeah, no,
Right?
100%.
And
yeah.
I think that gets lost in business.
Yeah.
And I think that causes a lot of frustration for individuals,
Yeah.
none more so than those on the receiving end.
Yeah, true.
And I also think it has a material impact on delivering good results.
You need to get buy-in, don't you?
commercially. Yeah, you need the buy-in. You need to show return on investment with everything you're doing. And even those intangible kind of measured outcomes as well, how important they are. We're doing a big piece at the moment with the business that I'm in where a lot of work's going into the brand. And some of the stuff we're doing, you can't directly point to a sale necessarily.
Yeah.
But you know that the person who made that call into the sales team perhaps caught a glimpse of the brand for the first time and took a few days. Then something came up. Oh, I need to get in touch, or I need this product. Oh yeah, I saw that the other day. Right, I'm going to get on the phone and talk about it. And I think, where you've got a great setup with the matrix of agencies globally and the team, I think having that respect on both sides can be the difference between winning or losing, to be honest with you.
That's a really good point.
I know.
Because do you find that, or how do you get around maybe that battle between kind of with the PE-backed businesses where you have to sort of say this is where the money's coming from versus actually we need to build like a really great brand? How do you get around those sort of conversations?
So couple of ways I've done it in previous businesses. In the current business, one of the first things I did when I went in was go, right, we need an ability to be able to measure all of our trackable marketing channels in a dashboard.
Key.
Let's visualize it. Let's be able to show people what this means.
Okay, nice.
Paid search isn't just about seeing your name or your brand on Google. It's about how many quotes are coming in, how many of those are we converting, and ultimately how many sales come off the back of it.
Okay,
so
nice.
visually, make sure you've got something that you can take the rest of the board, the leadership on
like
the journey as to your point. Why are we doing this, and what does it actually mean in monetary terms?
Yeah.
Second to that, it's absolutely about letting people see the before, during, and after of the strategy that you're rolling out.
Yeah.
Good point.
People don't like to be surprised. People
True.
people don't like to feel as though there isn't an option to collaborate within an organization.
Yeah.
So, for me, I'm very much, I'm all about communication. You've got to be able to have sometimes direct and difficult conversations with people.
Yes.
But you need to have an outcome on both sides that means we both understand each other. Can we move forward? And if we are going to move forward, let's make sure that we support what it is we're trying to do for the greater good of the business. So it's about
Yeah.
that bigger picture piece. A lot of
Okay,
businesses
I
are
like
very kind of siloed because they kind of get their blinkers on and they go, right, well, I only look at operations, and what marketing are doing doesn't really bother me.
Yeah,
Well, actually, it
completely.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, marketing could have a considerable impact on many areas of operations.
Yeah.
Similarly, it can have
Yeah.
a material impact in finance and all of the other departments. And I think it's about businesses who are now going on that journey of transformation are realizing actually, and it was one of the reasons I think I spoke to you about it the other day, how I've moved from transformation now
Yeah.
more into kind of major in my career in marketing and
Yeah.
digital is because actually out of what everyone's doing in transformation, where 5-6 years ago it was all about IT. It was all
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
what can we pull out? What does our
Yeah.
tech stack look like? How can we
Yeah.
ready ourselves for AI? Where what became quickly apparent to me was that MarTech was gaining severe momentum.
Yeah.
SaaS was moving very quickly.
Yes.
And actually,
It merged
marketing,
together, didn't it, a bit?
did. And marketing's really come out as, okay, if you want to transform, get a grip on your marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
that's an
that's real good. That's
So you've
really
had a
good.
cool, career path. Well, you started. You were doing music at the very start.
Yeah, I
I
started.
think it's cool. He was with
That's really cool.
What,
Adele?
singing?
No. Well,
Singer?
no. So,
Guitar.
so I started in the music industry, and I now work in construction. So it's quite a
Very different.
quite a journey.
hard hat.
But do you know
everything.
what? That some people won't understand this, but those that will understand it will appreciate what I'm saying. The similarities between all of the varying sectors and businesses that I've worked in are very apparent.
Okay.
When we talk about the challenges with digital, the challenges with transformation,
Yeah,
the challenges
yeah.
with getting people on board, and the challenges of knowing when change is the right thing, And when I started in the music industry, it was probably the industry that felt the tidal wave of change the hardest because
Yeah.
illegitimate, illegal downloading almost kind of took
LimeWire.
off
Oh
overnight.
my God,
right?
yeah.
Was it Napster? Was Napster one?
Napster.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was Napster,
Yeah.
LiveWire. So that industry had to come up very quickly with
A solution. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And at the time, MP3s were
Yeah,
the
I
answer to
remember.
that.
I used to love my MP3.
Yeah.
So I started out in digital music. So that was selling
That's
digital
amazing.
music over the air. So this was actually pre-iTunes,
Yeah.
before iPhone, before
super
Facebook,
young.
before the world that well, we say that, but it's actually only sort of 20 years ago. It's it feels like we're talking
James,
60
can you
years
see
ago.
my
does,
age? I'm
yeah.
20 years old.
I know. Well,
Just kidding.
but it's absolutely a great example of sort of 20 years on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The challenges that existed in that industry now continue to come up today.
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Different ways, yeah.
streaming, it's the commerciality of streaming. It's
Yeah.
always people
it's the
related, right?
voice that artists have and don't have. It's and you kind of push that through the rest of my career into other sectors. I was in the telco sector for 5-6 years at Vodafone. Almost saw that industry kind of tip overnight. You started customer propositions. You were doing like 50 Nokia devices. You were doing 30 Motorola devices. You had, Sony.
yeah.
You had all of these players, and then iPhone came along, Android came along.
yeah.
Believe it or not, even BlackBerry and Windows back then were, sort
remember-
of the
I had
dominant
a BlackBerry.
force.
when did iPhones come out? Like 10 years ago?
2007.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
me. I had a BlackBerry though. So
I mean, it's
remember
just
that.
life changing.
I went to Apple, got the first one, then went back to Android. Yeah.
Sorry,
Switched
I'm
to
not
Android.
even talking about Android with you. I'm not
Yeah.
into it. Anyway.
And I think what it showed for me was that you can't hang your hat on the fact that you've got it right
Yeah.
Oh,
or we've cracked
100%.
it,
Yeah.
because
It continues. It's like,
it's a continuous improvement.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I think why I get up every day and what keeps me excited and what keeps me going is because I know that whatever we delivered yesterday, today we can make improvements on that, or we can start to think about, okay, and what's next. And that's
I like
what-
that every time I'm
that's what
talking to
keeps-
him on
keeps
Teams.
me
It's like,
going.
what's improved, Ellie? What are we doing? What are we doing
Yeah.
with this? I'm like, I love it. I'm in the accounts. I know what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, you absolutely do.
And what are the pressures like? Because obviously Vodafone's a big corporate beast, and then every business, well, there's a lot of businesses backed by private equity.
Yes.
So what are the pressures? What are the differences? Would you say
From big corporate to private
to
equity.
private
Yeah.
equity back? Because some of these private
I feel like
equity
we'd like it
businesses
more.
can be quite ruthless and just high expectations because they want to sell the business in 3 to 5
Yeah,
years
true.
or just get a return. So
Do you know what? Private equity does get a hard time. It
I
does
think
get
it
a hard
does,
time.
yeah.
But actually, I've worked with some of the best people in my career who work in private equity.
That's good.
And I've learned so much.
Yeah, that's what I
I
think,
mean,
yeah.
the first kind of 6 months at HMV back in 2013,
HMV.
No, it's HMV.
Love
you know,
that.
they got picked up by PE.
They did, yeah.
I spent 6 months in the PE firm's office for the first 6 months, and just to kind of see, hear, be on the pulse, build the relationships
hey?
with the investment directors, just kind of know what kind of got them excited, or you know, what were necessarily maybe some of the areas that weren't going to garner their attention. That was invaluable, and I think that has stuck with me, you know,
Yeah.
throughout the rest of my career and other PE-backed businesses. So the challenges, Jack, would be not managing expectations, you know, thinking that you can just go and do whatever you want to do without actually having a serious commercial conversation about
Yeah,
the benefits
has to always
Oh,
be
gosh,
commercial.
yeah.
and how that plays back into the outcome that the PE house is
Yeah.
looking for. And sometimes, you know, of course they've got a plan, but sometimes that plan has to
Yeah.
tilt, and you have to be almost sort of describe it a little bit, sort of less scaffolding, more bamboo. You have to be able to adapt and also not be offended. Don't get offended easily.
Exactly,
True,
yeah.
Would be,
yes, that is a
would
big
be
thing.
another thing.
Because they're
Yeah,
quite
we had
brash,
that
aren't
when we
they?
were at our old
Yeah.
place. We were like, don't be offended by it. But then sometimes you're like, oh.
I am offended by it. Why did
Because
you
it
say
must
that?
be hard as well if you're, you know,
not
CMO, you
personal
want to
with
be
them.
creative,
Yeah.
you want to focus on brand.
You cannot
but-
say creative and brand stuff a lot with private
Well, that's what I
equity.
mean. Is it just about short-term numbers?
Yeah, it's all
Do you
A
think?
bit of
data.
both. I mean, you go.
Yeah.
Is it about short term? Look, it's always about the numbers.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
always about
Yeah.
the numbers. But they also get very excited when they can see that there is a creative delivery
Okay.
that garners more interest, grows
True.
market share, you know, gives them opportunities or opens up conversations for further M&A opportunities that
Yeah.
perhaps weren't there
Yeah,
previously.
agreed.
Okay.
So again, it's getting that balance right. And look, if you were to walk in every day and just start talking about creative and brand, you're probably not
That's a
going to.
no-no.
You won't
You're not
survive.
gonna, to be there very
They
long.
love a billboard, like when they see their brand somewhere, right?
Yeah. And you know, there's it's similar to what you asked, Jack, about, you know, corporate. Yes, you know, they also want to see the impact of their investment
Yeah.
being played out above the line, right?
Yeah.
They want to see that whoever they've got in the marketing seat or whoever they've got in the digital seat to drive it forward is actually having an effect.
Yeah.
And that's key. Yeah.
I think you had an interesting, career path, right? Because you had one where you're transformation, then you did more contracting stuff, which I think we see in the market a lot is
Yeah.
people need to network and go contracting and then go into like contracting CMO positions, and because it's like people don't want to invest in CMO stuff yet unless they
Yeah.
feel confident in them.
Yeah.
So like, that was obviously a pretty good career path that you did. What do you think about like for people at the moment who can't get jobs?
Yeah. Okay. So it's definitely a tough market out there, right? You know, but I think what did I learn sort of taking those kind of 8 to 10 years where I, you know, was an interim was, well, firstly, what did it give me? It gave me exposure into multiple sectors,
Yeah.
you know, fintech, private education, automotive,
Yeah.
safety services. You know, these are sectors that if you'd have asked me 20 years ago, they would not have been on my list of
Yeah, no, I was like,
I'm-
real
I'm-
sexy sectors.
I'm absolutely going to sort
And
of work
construction
in those,
now.
but
Yeah.
and work,
Especially
work
after
in
being
that
in
space.
music as well,
Yeah.
which is
And-
like super sexy.
And I think what it shows is I was very, you know, passionate and driven by showcasing and transferring my skill set to give those other industries and sectors maybe a benefit that they wouldn't have felt had they have just continued to employ in the same sector. You know?
Yeah, I always think it's interesting.
Yeah.
Different sectors
So,
is key.
so I was able to come in with a different mindset. I was able to come in with a different way of commercializing what was working and what wasn't working,
Yeah.
and new business models and that type of thing. And I think, you know, the most important thing that I took away from it as well was that it actually helped me get to where I am right now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which is a role that gives me, you know, fulfillment. You know, I
Nice.
wake up every day excited and passionate about what I'm doing. You know, I've got a fantastic supporting leadership team, CEO, CFO, and, you know, others across the leadership team who are absolutely behind the direction of travel that we're going for the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, that's good.
And had I not have had the experience in some of those other sectors with
Yeah.
some of the difficult individuals that we all encounter at different points in time, then perhaps I wouldn't have got to a place where I would have realised actually what is it I want and where is it I feel I'm able to give the most value to a business. So I absolutely feel that right now.
Yeah.
You know, we had a conversation a
good.
couple of weeks ago where I said to Ellie, you know, she asked me something and I said, well, do you know what, Ellie, the reason I can say this now and the reason that, you know, we're talking this way is because I'm genuinely happy where I am in my career right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice. I was saying that.
And
Yeah.
I think the coming back to your question on, I think for those out in the market right now seeking something, anything, you know, for some people
Yeah.
it will be, work on yourself as much as you can.
Yeah. That's right. You said this
You
a
know,
bit.
make sure that you don't forget your family.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that you can get as happy as you feel you can before you take a decision on what your next career move's going to be.
Yeah.
Because there can be a lot of options thrown up at you and you can go down a path and 3 months in, what have I done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
that's a good
A lot of
point.
people
Yeah.
do reach that, but what's
They
really
do, yeah.
refreshing is you're basically saying when you're joining a private equity business, there are really good opportunities that come from it, because a lot of
Yeah.
people do think I'm not going to go down the private equity route because it's going to be highly stressful, and I'm just
Loved it.
Yeah.
Some people really love it, but they get scared by it because
Some
there's a lot of
people do,
pressure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, look, you know, you've got to have your armor, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've got
Gotta
to,
have that
some people call it thick skin, you know.
Yeah.
I like to think that, you know, for me, resilience, determination, ambition, and honesty and just being genuine, right? You know, private equity like to work with people who are just going to tell them how it is and,
Yes.
Which
and
we
give
love,
them
which we like.
and give them you know sort of a and they'll back you 1,000%, right?
Yeah.
But they'll
good.
equally come down on you as hard if it's not the right thing.
Yeah.
But
There's
you
some
have
so intelligent people. Sorry, you keep going. But there's some intelligent people that, like, you know, we've been like, wow, they're actually so impressive that you're like pretty motivated by
Yeah.
it. So I think it's like a different thing. You get some really amazing caliber of talent. You know?
You do,
Yeah.
yeah, you absolutely do. So I think you know you've got to learn in everything that you're doing in the roles that you're in. You've got to make sure that you come away from that with lessons and learnings and what you can further develop. You know, never stop asking for feedback. You know,
Yeah.
good and bad.
That
You
is
know,
good- good
sometimes
advice,
you
yeah.
need to hear that. You know, a way you've approached something, or you know how something could be better in someone else's eyes. Whether or not you agree with it, you know, that's down to the individual. But you've got to be able to take that feedback. You've got to
Yes.
be able to be critiqued. You know, we
Yeah.
were talking before about there are a lot of businesses with, you know, some quite frustrated people who. You know, it's everyone else's fault. You know, oh well, this
Yeah.
happened because of so and so.
Yeah, and you can't do that all the
You know,
time.
they spend most of their time critiquing others across the business, but the moment you critique them, earthquake. You
Yeah.
know, it's kind of
Yeah.
you get the worst of those individuals. So, yeah,
What do you
need
think
both.
about, I think, there's like so many topics I could cover with you, but the easiest way to be fired as a CMO.
the easiest way. Don't be on. If you haven't got a commercial bone in your body, don't
That's
do it.
fair. Yeah, don't do it.
don't go near it. You
Yeah,
know, if you're not
that is fair.
confident in talking numbers and confident in talking ROI and confident in, you know, giving the confidence back to the PE that,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to absolutely, you know, sweat, blood and tears to deliver the outcome that,
Yeah.
that everyone's signed up to, it's not going to be for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you
Plus-
nail the relationship with private equity, they will just move you from one business to the other if they really like you.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That does happen a lot. But do you know what? It's a little bit like, you know, we were talking earlier about going back into roles and people that sometimes go back.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's my
people do,
personal
yeah.
perception that, no, you don't go back. You know,
Always
you
Yeah,
go forward,
agree.
move forward.
Yeah.
And some people, Jack, fall into the trappings of, they did a great job for us here. We're going to put them into this other business.
And then,
And it
And
doesn't work.
It doesn't
Oh, yeah.
work. And is that a fair reflection on that individual that, you know, they're not good enough, or
could be the structure
they
of the
couldn't hack
business.
it, or-
Yeah.
excuse me. That just comes into, you know, what I described earlier on is the invaluable experience of multi-sector,
Yeah.
multi-personality, if you can call it
Yeah.
that, right? In terms of the different CEOs that I've worked with, the different business leaders that I've worked with, you need to garner that experience to be able to sometimes say, actually, no, that's not going to work.
It makes you a bit
Yeah,
bulletproof
it's
from a
not.
career perspective. So if anything did happen in, for instance, any business that someone's working for, they can move into a different industry quite easily. So
Yeah.
if somebody's
Yeah,
just
true.
one-dimensional, just all fashion, and an interesting role crops up in, say, beauty or even construction, they're going to make that transition a lot harder, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you are defined by what you say no to as well. And,
So
and
true.
for where you hold your hands up and say, really great opportunity. I had it. I was talking about it in the last 24 hours. I was given a fantastic opportunity in Ireland, in fact, shortly
Cool.
after my wife and I got married, and we were ready, lock, stock and barrel, to make the move over to Ireland.
Yeah.
I had the contract through, it wasn't right. It didn't feel
Yeah.
right. And lo and behold, here I am now. And, it wouldn't have been right.
Yeah.
But, I think that's what, for me, I always say to people, is you've got to really work hard on yourself. And a lot of people forget that if you don't work hard on yourself, then you can't be everything that people want you to be in an organization, so you've got to work hard with your team, got to keep that encouragement going. You've got to be transparent. You've got to keep focused on continuous improvement, and you've got to be honest and genuine.
And how do you
I
remind
like that.
yourself about that on a daily,
Every
weekly
day,
basis?
every
Yeah.
day, yeah, every
You
day.
have to.
Is it in your calendar or
No,
it's
every
just
day. I spend half an hour every morning reminding myself of what my,
Yeah.
sort of tasks are for that day, and,
Yeah.
how I'm going to approach those tasks. But also just reminding myself of the importance of morals and values as well, and they evolve,
Yeah.
as you go into different businesses and you come away from it. But again, I think a lot of people try to sort of go, oh well, this is my kind of business head, and this is my kind of family head, and actually I found the balance between the two.
Yeah, yours is pretty
Yeah.
good, I think.
That's good.
And I think sometimes those people that go, no, it's kind of like, no, I don't do business at the weekend, or I don't do this. You're probably going to cause yourself more stress. But if you give
Yeah,
10 minutes,
I think so.
If you give
Agreed.
10 minutes,
I
if you
agree.
give 10 minutes to something that could cause you
Headache next week.
headache next
Yeah.
week, it can make
But that's
all
what
the
we
Why
say
not do
Sundays,
that? Yeah.
like even half an hour on a Sunday just
Yeah.
to prep for the week ahead.
Yeah.
You don't do half.
Not
an hour.
10
I
minutes,
love
but-
Sunday prep days. So, but I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like if you need to dedicate time for something which is going to benefit you,
Help
just
you
do
in
it.
your
Yeah.
future self. Is there any, throughout your journey, is there any kind of bit of career advice that you've got that you wish you ignored?
Career advice that I wish I ignored. That's a really good question.
I feel like we would have had it.
I
wrong.
think for me, it's just working for bad bosses. So it's looking at bad bosses and then I'm going,
Thinking,
I'm
yeah.
not going to do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. But if it's like someone maybe advised you throughout, or
No one's really
No one's done that.
tried to sort
There's
of.
a lot of traps being set.
There's been that. There are people that will say, "Oh, you should never do this, or you should never
Right.
do that,
Yeah.
or why are you thinking about that industry? That's not for you."
okay.
Well,
People
hang
have-
on,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can you tell me that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there will be a lot of people, recruiters, right? Recruiters who I would go and meet recruiters, and you'd kind of talk your background, career, and stuff, and they'd kind of go, right, so you're this, and
I
you're
hate
kind of
that,
like,
guys.
well,
We hate that.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
It's not us.
Letting you know.
It's
It's
not
not-
us, it's the
yeah,
client.
It's the
It is
client.
the
I do
client.
agree. It's the
not us,
client.
it's the client.
We have to
Because
say
you're
the
already
client.
saying that it's transferable skills in industries, but I know the client just looks at a freaking, okay, fashion, they must work for these brands.
So if a client
Yeah.
came to us and said, I need a CMO and it's a fashion client and I need A, B, and C,
So annoying.
we have to provide a short list and it's
'Cause
it's
that's
Do you know what?
challenging.
I can speak just on a client behalf. So
Yeah.
I've done a hire recently, hired a fantastic head of marketing in the
Nice.
US
Yes.
and in
She's
Canada.
great.
Oh, brilliant.
We like her.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I looked at her CV. I like to meet people. I like to just have the
It makes a
conversation,
difference, yeah.
get in the room. I flew out to Austin. I spent a couple of days meeting candidates.
Nice.
I knew instantly
You know, in the
It's
first
the gut.
5
I knew
minutes,
It's the
don't
gut,
you?
yeah.
I knew instantly who I was going to hire.
Yeah.
Or who I felt was the right hire.
Yeah.
And if you'd have talked, if a recruiter had have talked the kind of headlines from a CV and kind of career, some people would just go, "Oh, how's that going to work in this space?"
You would say no as a quick thing, yeah.
Whereas I know in myself that because of that experience that I've got across multi-sector, that I'm sure if someone had have talked my experience in music industry to someone in fintech, they would probably go, "Well, how's this going to work?"
Yeah.
But actually, it ended up being a great career move and delivered a fantastic outcome for the fintech business that I worked with for that short interim period. So I think my advice is, firstly, you've got to, as a client, you've got to want to take the time. As a CMO, you've got to take the time to go on that recruiting journey.
Yeah.
There are a lot of senior leaders who are quickly dismissive,
Yes.
claim they're too busy, don't get involved in the hiring process, and cause so many cause so many complications.
Yeah.
And I've been in businesses where people are trying to hire for 12 months.
We had
That's crazy,
we
though.
had a role where we placed a CEO with a health and wellness business. It took us 2 years.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
2 years.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's
And hopefully they're still in a job.
They're still there.
Yeah.
Thank God for that.
But I agree. I think people do need to be open because we love that. We don't want it to be, okay, it has to be this person going into this industry because it's true. It is transferable.
I know you actually I can't, it's probably an off record thing, but like sometimes you don't want to put that candidate in the position, but the brand really wants it.
But sometimes you don't know. If it's a client you've worked with for the first time, you don't know until afterwards.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But again, I think so many people go in for big senior roles without really truly knowing what they want. And they often try to think that that's the answer to poor sales, broken strategy, poor culture. Is this one individual going to be the glue that...
I mean, it's just too much. It's too much to say that.
And again, like I described, people have got to work on themselves. Businesses also need to hold mirrors up to themselves before they go on these hiring rampages to actually make sure that they're bringing... Well, have they got the right setup to bring these individuals in the first place?
Yeah, true.
Do they truly know who they are, what their strategy is, what's going to deliver the value for customer as well as internal customer as well? So,
Like that.
yeah.
I know.
But a lot of owners do need, I mean, they don't know the
They
answer.
need that guidance.
Yeah, they need guidance
They
from
need
people, don't they?
guidance.
From like consultants or non-execs, like specialist non-execs to say, yeah, you need to go down this route. Because a lot of businesses do get burnt, don't they? With like their
Only if
first...
those individuals truly have the experience.
Exactly, yeah.
And have lived and breathed and probably more times got the bruises.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there are businesses who surround themselves with consultants, surround themselves with
Too many.
with non-execs and think, oh, just because we've got that set up, then everything should be possible. But quite often than not, some of those individuals haven't got the real experience to, get to the outcome or really give the answers that business is seeking.
Okay, and to wrap it up, what would you say your next few years look like? What do you want to achieve, maybe?
What do my next few years look like? I think it's continuing to grow the business that I'm currently at, and continuing to see that business evolve on its ambition and global footprint. I think as a result of that brand will become more of a name in the markets that we play, a recognised and dominant force. More time with the family, more memories, more building memories with family and friends, because that for me is what gives me the fire and the hunger to go out there and be who I am every day. And on the career side, probably coming up to a place of looking at, okay, what does the next chapter look like? How do I want to spend the next kind of 20, 25 years in my working career? Because the answer isn't to just put my feet up and isn't it
You're
all
never gonna
great
do
and,
that.
and accomplished. So, for me, it's continuing to be present, continuing to be grateful every day for everything that I've got, and continuing to make sure that, I'm working with good people.
Good
Yeah,
people.
I
We
have to
always
work
say
with
that.
people.
You and I,
Yeah.
we're like good people. It makes your job
It
so
makes a
much easier.
difference. It makes a difference. Early on in my career, you don't realize that actually the impact of working with good people can be the difference between being happy in a job, being happy at home,
And
and so much more as well. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming all the way.
No,
Yeah,
you're very
thank
welcome.
you for gracing.
Thank you so much.
And
Jodie.
follow.
Very
Not you,
good.
but everyone else follow.
Yeah. See you next time.
Nice, thank you.
No worries.